Are you interested in adopting a wolf dog? Or are you already guardian to a wolf dog and discovering after the fact that they are extremely intelligent and athletic escape artists? Wolf dogs and the northern breeds that they are frequently mixed with have highly specialized fencing needs. This video is dedicated to showing how to build an enclosure for a wolf dog that they won't be able to jump or climb over, dig under, or chew through. The minimum fence height for a Wolfdog enclosure is 8 feet. Some especially mischievous wolf dogs will even climb out of an 8-foot fence and need either an overhang or hot wire at the top, sometimes even both. Wolf dogs love to dig, both for entertainment and for temperature regulation. Many, if not most, wolf dogs will quickly realize that they can dig under their fence if they aren't prevented from doing so. The most common type of dig guard is 3-foot fencing installed horizontally at the foot of their vertical fencing and secured all along the perimeter. If you don't already know this, wolf dogs have extremely strong teeth and jaws. And what's more, most of them love being destructive. If you're not careful, your fencing, or the siding of your house, or your irrigation system will become just another chew toy. It's imperative to use heavy-duty fencing materials that will stand up to the strength and determination of a wolf dog. Materials like vinyl fencing, wooden fencing, or most rolled wire fencing simply won't do. I use 4-gauge welded steel cattle panel stacked 2 tall and hung on 10-foot treated lumber posts in 2 foot of concrete. With that in mind, let's get this enclosure build going. After years of dreaming and planning, we finally found our home in the woods in the Pacific Northwest. I spent part of the first summer building them their first enclosure, which is about 1,400 square foot, or roughly 25 by 57. While I didn't film the process, I'm showing you this enclosure because it's a lot more doable for a first-time wolf dog guardian, and it provides a good amount of space to run, play, dig dens, and splash in their pool in summer. The whole time I was building this enclosure, though, I was dreaming of a bigger, wilder, forested enclosure, which I am so excited to share with you now. Even though you may be looking to build something smaller and more manageable to start, or maybe you want to build something even bigger and more challenging, the process and steps are going to be similar and can be scaled up or down to fit your project. My first step was identifying the area on our property that I wanted to enclose. For the large forested enclosure, it's a densely wooded 1/4 acre of hillside. First and foremost, I needed to clear the 400-foot perimeter where my future fence line would be. I chose to hire an excavator who came out and did it all in a single afternoon. He cleared brush and bushes and small trees, leaving me a 5 to 6 foot wide swath of cleared land where my fence would go. He also took down 2 large dead trees that would have created a future hazard. Dig guards are always one of the most challenging parts of an enclosure build for me because I hate digging. Ideally, you'd want to dig down about 6 inches all around your perimeter, lay your fencing in the trench, and then cover it back up. But I did not have it in me to dig out 1,200 square foot of dirt and roots, so I opted to lay the dig guards on the top of the ground with the intention to secure them to the bottom of the future fence and stake them down to prevent a tripping hazard. Over time, I hope to see leaves and twigs and weeds cover them up more and more. My next step was pre-digging the post holes. before even buying the posts. And when I tell you this was a slog, I really cannot overstate just how hard it was. Did I mention that I hate digging? Also, I didn't film the process, so you don't have to watch me struggle or hear me swear like a pirate. You're welcome. Believe it or not, just getting the materials on site for a big project like this is a lot of work. We rented a U-Haul and over the course of 2 days picked up and unloaded 22 10-foot posts, 22 bags of concrete, I ended up needing 27, and 55 cattle panel. It came to a little over 3 tons of material, and by the end of the second day, I was feeling every bit of it. A big thank you to my awesome and extremely adorable husband for lending me his gym muscles and his driving expertise for material acquisition. Next came setting the posts. This doesn't take any specific expertise. You want to make sure your posts are spaced properly. You want to make sure that all of your holes are the same depth. And you want to make sure to use lots of concrete, especially on posts that are as tall and heavy as these. And then all you need to do is make sure that your posts are plumb. The posts are officially finished. And I wanted to give you a little walk around the perimeter. These 2 posts are only square posts. They're where the gate will hang. And everything else ended up being round. We've got 27 posts in total. They're 10 foot long and 2 feet in the ground, set up for our 8-foot fence. Each one of them is set in concrete, so they're not going anywhere anytime soon. We ended up with about 400 feet of fencing. It'll be about 10,000 square feet when it's done, which is a 1/4 acre. One of the challenging parts is obviously going to be the terrain. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but it's uneven ground, it's sloped. And that was one of the considerations for round posts because of the angle that the cattle panel, which is the fencing material I'm using, it's a rigid fencing material, so while it slopes down and around these curves and corners, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to match up these square faces of your typical 4x4 post. So we ended up with these round posts. They're 5-inch diameter, at least that's what they say they are. All of these seemed to be a little bigger than that. So there you go. That is the perimeter tour. You can see it's very wild in here. I think it's going to be really good. I think they're really going to like it. In the distance, you're seeing what kind of looks like a road. That is our driveway. These 2 posts here, they're not going to have a gate on it, but the panels are going to be easily removed in case we need to bring a vehicle up in here again, like we did when we had some trees cleared. Speaking of, that was one of them. And here's the other one. They were sadly dead and had to come down. But I think they'll end up making really fun play platforms for the Wolfdogs to jump over and run along. So yeah, that's the tour. Once your perimeter is cleared, your dig guards are down, your materials are on site, and your posts are set in concrete, you're in the home stretch. It's also the most satisfying part of the process because you get to see the enclosure really start to take shape. But how exactly does it go from a 1,000-pound pile of steel panels on the ground to an 8-foot tall fence suspended securely between its posts? Especially when I am not 8 feet tall and have but 2 hands and 1 center of gravity. Let me show you some of my favorite tricks. Tools and materials. This forested enclosure that I'm building for the Wolfdogs is the 7th enclosure I've built for Wolfdogs, the 5th of this general style, and I've learned a few things along the way that I thought might be helpful. First of all is the fencing material. This is cattle panel. This is an offcut. They come in 50 inches tall, so just over 4 feet, and 16 inches wide. And for Wolfdogs, they need a minimum of an 8-foot tall fencing. So if you stack 2 of these 50-inch panels, one on top of the other, you end up with 8 foot 4 inches. Some Wolfdogs will require lean-ins at the top. For some, 8 foot is just fine. But the real benefit to this material is just how heavy duty it is compared to your typical rolled wire fencing or even most of your cheaper chain link. This is just a much heavier gauge. This is 4 gauge. Your cheaper chain link, I believe, is 12 gauge, and then they do make heavier duty or 9 gauge chain link, but this is 4 gauge. It's really heavy duty. The welds here are really heavy duty, and I've never had a Wolfdog be able to tear this apart. But it can be a little bit of a learning curve to work with this kind of material. So the first tool that you're gonna need is a pair of bolt cutters to trim up your cattle panel to size. You'll be doing a lot of cutting. It's quite the upper arm workout, at least for me. So a lot of people use different types of fasteners, and I've used a number of different types of fasteners myself. When you are screwing into wood, I love these fence post screws. So first of all, it comes with its own drill attachment, and they're just regular screws, but they have this secondary piece on it that when you screw it into the wood, acts as a staple to hold your cattle panel to the post. And I like to screw it into both vectors, both the vertical and the horizontal vectors. And I use a minimum of about 4 per panel per post. Some people also use just regular fence staples that you hammer in. I haven't had the best luck with those. Some people use screws with large washers, which can also work, but these are just super convenient and they do a really great job. All right, so the obvious weakness is if you're stacking 2 4-foot panels on top to make 8 foot, is you have this seam down the center of your fencing, and you have to close that up. And they don't, to my knowledge, they don't make a dedicated piece of hardware for that. So what I use and what every other Wolfdog person I know uses are these hog rings. You end up using a lot of them. I need to go buy about 5 or 6 more boxes of these. But they're just like this. They're made out of copper. I guess they're designed to go in a pig's nose, poor little creature. And you need this pair of pliers to fasten them. So you would just open up your pliers, fit in your piece, just put them in like that, and then you would squeeze to fasten 2 pieces of cattle panel together. And I go every single square all the way down that center seam. It's probably about 25 per seam. And then I also go along the bottom and use these to attach the vertical fencing to the horizontal dig guards at the bottom of the fence to keep them from digging out. Just the other tools that I use, a standard drill to screw in my fence post screws. Gloves, obviously very important. These things, especially when you cut them, the raw edges down here are really sharp. So keep that in mind for yourself, but also keep that in mind for leaving raw edges where the wolf dogs can get to them. I always trim my cattle panel really carefully so that there's never just a raw edge just dangling out in open air. But gloves, you're going to need them when you're working with this material, and then also just all the wear and tear using the bolt cutters and the pliers. These are kind of funny. I'll show you in another video how I get that second panel up to the 8-foot level. I essentially use it like a hinge. I attach the bottom panel, I flip the upper panel upside down, hog ring it in a few places, and then just sort of open it up like a hinge. The hard part is holding it in place while you fasten it if you don't have a helper. I have 2 helpers, Echo and Gunner, but neither of them have opposable thumbs, and neither of them have much of a work ethic. So I end up doing the majority of this by myself unless I can sucker my husband into helping me. So I've started using this. This is just wire that I have sort of twisted together and bent. Nothing fancy. And I hook this wire around the fence post and just hook it on one corner and then go to the other side and hook it on the other corner. And it holds it in place while I fasten it properly with screws. And then the last thing you're going to need is some sort of ladder or step stool, unless you're 8 feet tall, which I'm not. Okay, first you screw your handy dandy proprietary bent wire. Wrap it around the post. Loosely hook it on the fencing so you can still move it around easily, but it doesn't flop back over on you. The biggest challenge, aside from the size on this enclosure, is that the ground is sloped. So while our posts are perfectly plumb, the cattle panel follows the contour of the land and does not match up perfectly with the posts. So you just have to be a little bit creative and make sure you use plenty of fasteners so that everything is well attached. So I use 4 per section here. I like to leave the top one off until I'm attaching the second panel, and then I'll screw them in together using one fastener and screwing both panels together. So that means I need one out here. Yes, I screw my glove into the post at least 100 times a day. And one in the center here. And then I'll do the top one when I do the top panel. Time for the top panel. This may be the worst panel to demonstrate this technique on, because when I open it up like a hinge, I'm going to bump into that stump. But that's life. It's realistic. You get to see me suffer and struggle and hopefully learn something. Next step, you take your hog rings, about 3 of them, and your special hog ring pliers, and you loosely put one on each end and one in the middle. sure you have your wires handy. And cross your fingers it clears the stump. Now if I let go of this, it's going to make a liar out of me, but usually it starts to fall right back down on top of your head. But now this side can't. Now it's hooked up there. It's not going to fall on your head, but you still, because you've only used 3 of these hog rings and it's just loosely wired up there, you can still slide it around if you need to. I'm pretty happy with where this one's lining up. So now we'll just fasten it together. I'm going to apologize in advance because I do not have nearly enough hands to make this video. Here are our fence post screws. Here is one that's fastened. Here's another one. And we're going to put in a bunch more. Use one screw and fasten both of them. So let me see if I can do that and film at the same time. Hey, look at that. And we'll get our step ladder up to do the top one. Our next step is to address this seam in the center between the upper panel and the lower panel. As you can see, it's not attached, and that's not secure. To do that, you need these special pliers. Open up the pliers, put in the ring, squeeze, it's connected. And you just do that every single square until your hand cramps up. If this footage is starting to look repetitive, it's because it is repetitive. It was a lot of struggling to carry a 16-foot length of cattle panel into place, screwing it securely onto the posts, struggling to carry over the second panel, hinging it up to the top of the fence, and scrambling to get it screwed into place before it fell on my head. It was a lot of clamping hog rings along the center seam and along the bottom to the dig guards until your hand cramped up. It was a lot of trimming off excess cattle panel with bolt cutters until your pecs and traps are screaming at you, and then moving to the next section to do it all over again, and again, and again. You get the point. It's a lot of hard work. I am so tired working on this enclosure. My shoulders are sore, and my back is sore, and my feet are sore. So today I've decided, instead of finishing the last 3 sections, I'm going to focus on the gate. That takes a lot more mental energy and work to calculate it out and get the cuts correct, but it's a lot simpler physically. So that's what I'm going to do today. Gates and double gate systems probably deserve their own video. When you go to this much work to create a secure enclosure, it's really embarrassing and demoralizing to discover that they've learned to unlatch the gate, or wiggle it loose at the bottom and squeeze through, or that they're lying in wait to rush past you when you come in or go out. This enclosure will eventually have a double gate. For now, it has a single gate, made with this $40 gate kit from Home Depot. I did make the gate both taller and wider than it's specified for, but I also reinforced it with extra hinges and a semi-rigid cattle panel to give it sheer strength. You're certainly welcome to choose a different gate style for your enclosure, but this has worked for me on 3 separate enclosures, 2 of which were taller and wider than specified. Once the fence and gate was complete and the dig guards were secured to the base of the fence along the whole perimeter, I used a rubber mallet to pound in about 450 12-inch landscape staples to hold the dig guards in place. This took 2 full days, mostly because of all the roots. But it worked well to minimize a tripping hazard. Over time, I do hope to see nature cover the dig guards more and more with leaves and twigs and weeds. But for now, they do their job of securing the enclosure by preventing digging along the fence line. The next part may not seem like an important step to include, but cleaning up after yourself, especially when you have a lot of sharp scraps of fencing, is essential to do before releasing your wolf dogs into their new enclosure. The moment this fence was secure, I had to keep myself from literally running to introduce them to their new space. I had to check my enthusiasm and make sure I had picked up all of my construction debris, especially anything sharp like scraps of cattle panel. If you're building an enclosure on level ground, you won't need to trim off so much of your cattle panels. I had to because this enclosure is built on a slope. The fencing has to follow the slope while matching up to the vertical posts, creating a fair amount of waste that you could avoid if you were building on level ground. It was all worth it, though, immediately when Echo and Gunner were introduced to their enchanted forest enclosure for the first time. They sniffed and explored, they raced and played, they climbed on logs, and when they had worn themselves out, Echo came to lay next to me. The gratitude and contentment I saw and felt coming from her made every sore muscle, every bloody scrape, every day of hard work and every dollar spent worth it 10 times over. Every wolf dog requires a safe and secure and comfortable enclosure. Not every wolf dog gets to have such a large, beautiful, wild, and enriching space as this. Being able to provide something like this for them is one of my proudest accomplishments, and the culmination of years of dreaming and planning. A person I respect in the IT field once explained that in tech, there's fast, there's affordable, and there's quality. And you have to pick two. You can't do something fast and cheaply and have good quality. If you want quality and you don't have a lot of time, it's going to cost money. If you want quality and you don't have a big budget, it's going to take a lot of time and effort. For Wolfdog Enclosures, I feel like the same principle applies, but with the variables of size, security, and cost. If you want secure and cheap, it's going to have to be small. If you want large and cheap, it's not going to be secure, and this is not an acceptable option for a wolf dog. This forested enclosure represents my highest personal budget, my greatest personal effort, and uncompromising security that I know I can trust. I'm so happy with and proud of the results, and Echo and Gunner are in heaven right now. So whether you're dreaming of a large forested enclosure or planning a smaller, more manageable build, remember to choose heavy-duty quality materials that your wolf dog cannot chew through. Remember to build your fence high enough that they cannot jump or climb over. And if you have an especially mischievous wolf dog, remember that you may need to add an overhang or hot wire at the top. Remember to always install dig guards along the perimeter that prevent escapes via digging under your fence. And remember to make sure that your gate is well secured. A lack of proper containment is the single biggest reason that I see wolf dogs come into rescue. Many, if not most, of the common challenges that people encounter while trying to be good guardians to a wolf dog can be managed, mitigated, or avoided entirely with an escape-proof enclosure. Escapes put a wolf dog's life at risk, whether that be the risk of being struck by a vehicle, the risk of being shot, the risk of being trampled by livestock, or the risk of being seized and destroyed by the authorities. I have seen all of these outcomes. An outdoor enclosure also prevents a wolf dog from destroying and in some cases ingesting items in your home. If you've ever had a destructive puppy, multiply that by 100 to understand how destructive a wolf dog can be. They are frequently given away by their owners, who have incurred thousands and thousands of dollars of damage to their home, including but not limited to shredded couches and mattresses, destroyed drywall, damaged plumbing and electrical, chewed through doors, broken windows, flooding, burnt out well pumps, destroyed irrigation systems, and trips to the vet for poisoning and intestinal blockages. All of these outcomes can be avoided with a proper enclosure. Similarly, common behavioral issues that often result in wolf dogs being gotten rid of include resource guarding, seasonal hormone changes, same-sex aggression, and prey drive, all of which can develop or increase with maturity. These behavioral problems can be mitigated and managed with the help of a good enclosure that allows you to separate your wolf dog when he or she needs space or is experiencing stress or is causing problems. Which is all to say that before you can even begin to properly care for a wolf dog, you must consider the enclosure that they will need. Considerations like, how big should it be? How tall does the fence need to be? What if my wolf dog is a climber? How do I keep them from digging under the fence? What materials should be used? What else will they think of to defeat their containment? And how much will this all cost me? Thanks so much for watching. We really hope to see you again on future videos, and if you enjoyed this one, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with other animal lovers. Thanks.